we are going to construct a box and whisker plot. If you haven't watched the 2 previous videos for this, I do suggest it if you are struggling at all with box and whisker plots. I will try to explain it in here as much as I can, but there were using box and whisker plots to compare data set. So that was kind of the introductory video to all this. It just started with what they look like and how to read it. And then we calculated the 5-number summary in interquartile range. And that's what the video is called, 5-number summary in interquartile range. So with this one, what we're going to do is we're going to calculate those numbers and then we're going to plot them. So if you haven't gone through those other 2, or if you struggled with some of your topics, or maybe you skipped forward, hoping that this one would be a little easier, make sure you go back and learn what box and whisker plots are and kind of how to read them before just jumping into creating one. So anyhow, the following are the distances in miles to the nearest airport for 18 families. So here's all 18 families' distances, and I don't necessarily want to read them right out. Notice that the numbers are ordered from least to greatest. So they do tend to do this for us, which is really nice. We don't have to put them in order. I know in the book that we used in previous years, we did end up having to write them in order. They were out of order. So that is kind of a nice idea. I'm going to click on this one. So if you haven't watched those other videos, you understand what we're building. So we're going to build a box that looks like this. So it's literally box and whiskers. So it's a box in the middle and it has 2 whiskers coming off of either end. So the whiskers actually represent minimum and maximum. So we just look at minimum as far as what is the smallest number, and for maximum, what is the largest number. So the minimum number here is 11, so we put a dot on 11. The maximum number is 50, so we put a dot at 50. And then we need 3 other numbers here. So we have median, which just means middle. So we go to the middle of the numbers. And in this case, this is a different example. There's only 12 numbers here. So I know 12 divides by 2. So I know that if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I land on 31. But if I do this from the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I land on 32. So I actually land on both of these numbers. Oh, well, let me highlight them. So what I want to do is find out what number is in between these 2 numbers. So when that happens, I have to add them together, 31 plus 32, and then divide by 2. So if I did that math, I would find that it was 31.5. And that is why they graphed it at 31.5 here. And then I would do the same thing for these other 2 dots. So the first dot is what we call the lower quartile, and it's the lower half. So I'm going to highlight it. You'll see only the comma's highlighted there. So I kind of wanted to show you which half I was looking at here. So there's a lower half, the first 6, and there's an upper half, the second 6. So we just split them in half, literally. And then we say, well, I know 6 can divide by 2 also. So if I go 1, 2, 3, I land on 15. But if I come here and I go 1, 2, 3, I land on 27. So again, I want to add those 2 together, divide by 2. And the lower quartile, it should show me here, is going to be 21. So 15 plus 27 divided by 2 will land on 21. And then I do the same thing, and I'm going to re-highlight that comma just so you can kind of see. So this is the upper quartile, or the upper half. It's not the upper quartile. The upper quartile is actually the number we're going to find. So then again, I have 6 numbers, so I can go 1, 2, 3, I land on 40. But here I go 1, 2, 3, and I land on 42. So I have to add these together and divide by 2. So if I go 40 plus 42, divide by 2, I land on 41. So again, that's why they did this 41. So that was a little easier for me to just explain it to you from the dictionary here. But this is the idea. We're just going to calculate these numbers, and I'll show you how to write them out over here on this other screen to make it a little easier to divide them up visually. So they actually show you here, they put the lines here and divide them up. And I'll do kind of that same thing on this next screen. So let's go ahead and look at the first one here. So here are the scores of 15 students on a science test. So I'm always trying to divide it up into two groups, lower and upper. So 15 doesn't divide by 2. It's an odd number. If I go back 1 to 14, 14 does divide by 2. So I'm going to write down the first 7 numbers. The reason it's 7 is because 14 divided by 2 is 7. All right, so I'm going to come over here, click on my pencil, and I'm going to write the first 7 numbers as long as my pencil stops arguing. So I have 57, 59, 63, 70, 72, 74, one more, 75, right? 1, 2, 3, 7, yes. And then I'm going to write the next number right here in the middle. So I have the first 7 numbers. This is the 8th number in the row. So this is actually this 75 right here. And then I'm going to keep writing now. So I have the next 7 numbers written out here. 91, 93. Those are a little scrunched together, but those are different numbers. All right, so I have 7 on the top, 7 on the bottom, and I have this 1 that just randomly dropped in the middle. So this 1 that dropped in the middle is actually our median. Because there were 15 numbers, that tells me there's going to be 1 right in between. I can't split them perfectly even. There's going to be 1 number left over right in the middle. So I have the first 7, I have the last 7, and I have this 8th one right in the middle. So what I want to do is make sure that this middle number here is, I want to drag it back and forth, and you can see that number up top. So I'm clicking my mouse and I'm holding it, and I'm going to drag it until it's 75, and then I'm going to let go. So I really didn't have to do anything on that one. I was just showing you that it moves back and forth. So the next numbers that we can mess with really easily are our minimum and our maximum. And jump over here real quick and circle them on the board. So minimum is just your first number. Maximum is your last number. So it's that simple. And so now that we know that minimum is 57, I'm going to click and drag this down to 57. And then my maximum is 94, so I'm going to click and drag it up to 94. I'm going to drop. So if you notice when I'm not dragging, it's a pointer. When I click and hold and I don't let go, it looks kind of like the fist is holding it. It'll go back and forth. I can actually let go of the mouse pad, and it will stay a fist like this until I click again. So I thought I had to click and hold up until that second one I let go right now, but you can click it and it stays held, and then you can unclick it when you have it where you want it. So that's kind of nice. You don't have to click and hold the drag. All right, so we do need to make sure we move these last 2 points here so that we can get this box and whisker plot looking the way it's supposed to look. And for this one, if you haven't watched my other 2 videos, this is just a way to look at distribution, meaning how many of the 15 numbers that we have here land in different areas. So we have our minimum and maximum, just shows us our beginning and our end. And then we have the lower, geez Louise, I'm saying that wrong, the lower quartile, or the lower half, and we have the upper half. So we want to kind of know, is the range or the number of numbers in between bigger or smaller? It just gives us a good idea of where all the numbers are landing based on how big these boxes are for each part of it. All right, so let's go ahead and find the number that we want. So to find the lower quartile, quartile is just a fancy word for median. That's all it is. Remember, median means middle. So I'm going to find the middle of the lower half. Lower half just means the first numbers. So the first 7 numbers that I wrote down. Again, I know 7 does not divide by 2. So what I want to do is find the middle of those numbers. 6 divides by 2. I always take a step back, never take a step forward. So if it's 7 numbers, I always go back to 6. I know that I'm going to have 3 numbers on the left and 3 numbers on the right, and there's going to be 1 number right in the middle. You could step up to 8 and say that you're going to bounce 4 in from each side, because then you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could actually do a step up if you wanted to, if you were thinking that way. All right, so this is my lower quartile. This is my beginning of my box. So I'm going to click and drag it over to 70 and then drop it. Remember to click it to drop it, just to make sure that you, if you do click and hold when you release, it does drop there. All right, so we have one more to find here. So we're going to do the same thing on this one. Again, there's 7 numbers. I know that 7 doesn't divide evenly, but 6 does. So I have 3 numbers here, 3 numbers on the right side, and this number that's left right in the middle in between. So there should be the same number of numbers on each side. So I have 3 on the side, 3 on this side, 1 in the middle. And I'm going to take and drag this over to 88. And then I drop it. So this actually shows me really quickly that there was more numbers in between. Whoops, didn't mean to grab that. There was more numbers in between the median and the upper quartile than there were the lower quartile and the median. So there's a greater range in there, in between these numbers is what that means. Not that there's more numbers in there. There's 6 numbers for the first one, and there's, or sorry, 7 numbers for the first one and 7 numbers for the second one. There's the same number of numbers, but the range, meaning how many numbers are between 75 and 57, how many numbers are between 94 and 83. So it kind of gives us a better idea there of the range and how different the numbers land on this graph. All right, so let's go ahead and click explanation, or sorry, click check. Only click explanation if you want an explanation. All right. So if you haven't seen this in any of my previous videos, this little teacher icon means that I have dropped videos into this instruction. So if you want to find videos, you can always click right on here. This is other videos, but these are the ones that Alex has dropped on there. So if I specifically drop one, you'll see that the teacher kind of in front of the, I'm assuming that's like a whiteboard, kind of what it looks like to me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click next. Okay, so same thing here. So we have the following are ages of 16 history teachers in a school district. Well, 16, I know 16 divides evenly by 2. So if I divide it by 2, I get 8. I'm going to take the first 8 numbers, and I'm going to write them on top here, like this. So I have 26, 29. I'm going to have to scrunch them just a little bit here. They're a little smaller than I have been. Let's see, that's 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And then I have the second half, 39, 41, 46, 50, 50, 52, 53, and 55. Sorry, I started going really crooked there because I was paying more attention to my list than I was actually where I was writing on my board here. All right, so I did split evenly. On the last one, I had a number that was left over right in the middle. I don't have that this time. So if you do write it this way, where you write them in 2 lists, you have to look at the end of the first list and the beginning of the second list, because that's going to tell you your interquartile range. Now, if it's the same number, 39, woohoo! We don't have to do any calculation there. We can just take this and drag it over to 39. Ooh, one more, 39. Because if I were to write this out, 39 plus 39 divided by 2 is 39. So if you add these together and divide by 2, you come right back to 39. So there's really no reason for us to add them and divide if it's the exact same number. So the last problem, we ended up with a middle number here. There was one left over, but in this case, the numbers divide exactly evenly. That sounded a little funny to say it that way, but they divided exactly in half. That's what I'll say. All right, so we also can very easily do the minimum, which is 26, and the maximum, which is 25. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drag this down to 26, and I'm going to drag this up to 55, which is all the way at the end here. And always make sure, you can always make sure that number floating at the top above the hand says the number that you're looking for, just to make sure you're not kind of trying to guess that one. Okay, so we do have 2 more numbers here. So we already know we divided it in half, and it was 8 numbers. 8 also divides exactly in half. I know that 8 divided by 2 is 4. So if I just draw a line here, then I have 4 numbers on the left and I have 4 numbers on the right. And I can actually just kind of continue, but I'm going to do it in a green, the bottom half, just so you can see that they're different. So I went ahead and drew the line there just so that you could see it. So I divided both my lower half and my upper half, just so that I could see where it landed. So now I need to add these 2 numbers together. So I get 33 plus 35 divided by 2. So we get 68 divided by 2. We end up with 34. So 34 lands right in between these two. So that's why I want to drag this number to 34. All right, and then I'm going to look at these 2 numbers. Well, these 2 numbers are exactly the same. So it's the same thing when we had 39 and 39. I don't need to add them together and divide by 2. I'm going to just go right back to 39. So same thing with 50. 50 plus 50 divided by 2 is 50. Because 50 plus 50 is 100. 100 divided by 2 comes right back to 50. So remember, if they're the same number, you don't have to add them. You just know that that is the number that you're looking for. So here's our box and whisker plot. This one looks very similar to the last one, actually, where this range is quite a bit larger than the lower range. All right, so one more of these. And I'm going to go back. Okay. Close that down. All right, so the following are the distances in miles to the nearest airport for 17 families. So here are the 17 families' distances. I know, again, 17 does not divide by 2. But if I take one step back and go to 16, 16 does divide by 2, which is 8. So I know I want to take the first 8 numbers, and I'm going to write them down here. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to write that 9th number right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I'm going to keep writing from there. So here's my 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th. Sorry, I'm going sideways here because I wasn't paying attention and writing too big at the beginning part here. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I do, in fact, have 8. And because this number right here is kind of lost in the middle, it doesn't belong to the lower, doesn't belong to the upper. It's right stuck in the middle, which, again, that is exactly what median means. So we want to scooch this guy over to 31 because that's where our middle is. So let's look at, here's our lower, and here's our upper. So lower, we're going to drag down to 6. Upper, we're going to drag up to 47. We're going to drop it right there. All right, so we get to figure out those last 2 pieces there. All right, so let's look at the lower half here. So I know I divided it up when we did this. This was 8 numbers that we divided up. 8, again, does divide by 2. So if I just put a line right in the middle, so I have 4 numbers on the left, I have 4 numbers on the right. So now I have to add these 2 numbers together. So I have 10 plus 12, and I need to divide by 2 so I can figure out what is in between. What is right in between there? So I get 22 divided by 2, and I get 11. So 11 is right in between 10 and 12. So I'm going to drag this down to 11. And then I want to do that same thing for the upper half. So again, it was 8 numbers. I know 8 can divide evenly by 2, so I want 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 numbers on the left and 4 numbers on the right. Sorry, that's a little crooked. And then we end up with 39 and 39. Again, when it's the exact same number, that is your answer. You don't have to add and then divide by 2. That's a little redundant when you do it that way. But if you do forget and you add and divide by 2, it's not really a big deal. It's just if you can remember that part of it, then it's just one less step that you have to do. So in this one, this actually looks a little the opposite of what we've seen before. So now the upper half looks like it's got a smaller range than the lower half does. So the lower half, if we look at this, it goes from 6 to 30. So there's quite a lot more space between 6 and 30 than there is between 33 and 47. So that's really what this shows you, is just how much space is there between the numbers. If I say 30 minus 6, I get 24 numbers. So there's 24 different numbers in between there. And I'm not talking about these numbers necessarily. I'm saying if I count 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, I just counted 24 numbers. That's what this space represents. There's 24 spaces between this point and this point. So it just represents that distance is all it represents. All right, go ahead and click check. And we're all done with that one.